Good afternoon, Honorable Council President and members of the City Council. My name is Jordan Moore, Senior Planner for the Planning Department, and I'm joined today by Becky Malone, Program Manager from the Planning Department. Brian Widener, Urban Forester from the City's Transportation Department, is also in attendance. And the item before you right now is the appeal of the environmental determination for as-needed tree maintenance services for streets right-of-way. The first issue raised by the appellant is that the project description is vague and the location of the work to be performed is overly broad. Staff's response is that City staff reviewed the as-needed tree maintenance services contract when preparing this NORA. The NORA includes a high-level summary of the project that identified that the scope of action was to enter into a contract to maintain streets within the public right-of-way. The agreement between the City of San Diego and West Coast Arborist, Inc. to provide tree maintenance services for streets right-of-way was included as Attachment 3 for this item. The NORA includes contact information for a city contact who manages the project and who is available to answer any questions about the project scope. The appellant contacted the Environmental Policy section of the Planning Department on November 3rd to ask about the appeals procedure, and staff provided the requested information as well as referring the appellant to the listed city contact for questions about the project. The second issue raised by the appellant is that there could be cumulative impacts. Staff's response is that the project is a one-year contract for as-needed tree maintenance services with the current services provider, West Coast Arborist, Inc. The contract allows West Coast Arborist, Inc. to perform tree maintenance services on the city's behalf. There was a prior contract for the same scope of work that has expired. However, the new one-year contract does not expand the scope of services beyond the prior contracted services scope of work. The City Council adopted a CEQA resolution for options on this prior contract, Resolution number 313-210, that declared the contract to be categorically exempt from CEQA pursuant to CEQA guidelines, Section 15301, Existing Facilities, and 15304, Minor Alterations to Land. There would be no expansion of services and thus no change from the current environmental condition. The project would not have cumulative impacts. The third issue raised by the appellant is that there could be significant impacts on the environment. Staff's response is that pursuant to CEQA guidelines, Section 15382, significant effect on the environment means substantial or potentially substantial adverse change in any of the physical conditions within the area affected by the project. There would be no change in or expansion of tree maintenance services, and thus no change from the existing environmental conditions. You found this
Oh, okay. I'll put it back. Okay, I'll leave it right there. Good luck to
My apologies, I've muted the...
Not to worry. As I was saying, there aren't going to be any changes or expansion in tree maintenance services, and therefore there aren't going to be any significant impacts on the environment. The fourth issue raised by the appellant is that the project could be adjacent to a scenic highway, and staff's response is that there are two officially designated state scenic highway segments within the City of San Diego: State Route 163 through Balboa Park, as well as State Route 52 through Mission Trails Regional Park. Any trees located alongside either State Route 163 or 52 would be in Caltrans right-of-way and not maintained by the city's Department of Transportation Streets Division. Any trees within Balboa Park or within Mission Trails Regional Park that are along the designated state scenic highway segments would be maintained by the city's Parks and Recreation Department, not by the city's Department of Transportation Streets Division. Therefore, there would be no impacts to resources within a state scenic highway that could result from services provided under the contracted issue. The fifth and final issue raised by the appellant is that the project could affect historical resources. Staff's response is that the maintenance of historically designated trees or trees within designated historic districts is not considered an adverse impact to the historic resource. Should any historically designated trees or trees within designated historic districts be identified for removal due to age or disease, the removal of the tree and subsequent replacement would be reviewed and approved by Historical Resources staff, consistent with the city's Historical Resources regulations. The city continues to protect landmark, heritage, grove preservation, and parkway resource trees in accordance with the guidelines under Council Policy 900-19. However, the city does reserve the right for tree removal for public safety under Municipal Code Chapter 6, Article 2, Division 6 for street planting, as well as under Council Policy 200-5. The city's policy to protect and retain all trees, regardless of protection status, is guided by Council Policy 200-5, as well as by the city's Climate Action Plan. The project before the City Council has been reviewed in accordance with CEQA and was determined to be categorically exempt. Based upon evidence in the record, this project is exempt pursuant to CEQA guidelines Section 15301, existing facilities, and 15304, minor alterations to land, and would not result in a significant effect on the environment. Furthermore, the exceptions listed in CEQA guidelines Section 15300.2 would not apply because no cumulative impacts were identified, no significant effects on the environment were identified, the project would not cause a substantial adverse change in the significance of a historic resource, the project is not adjacent to a scenic highway, nor is the project identified on a list of hazardous waste sites pursuant to Section 65962.5 of the Government Code. The assertion by the appellant of the inapplicability of the environmental determination for this project is not supported. The appellant does not offer evidence demonstrating how the proposed project would exacerbate environmental conditions or cause an environmental impact. Therefore, staff's recommendation is that the City Council deny the appeal of the environmental determination and approve the environmental determination of exemption for as-needed tree maintenance services for streets right-of-way. This concludes our staff's presentation, and we are now available to answer any questions you may have. Thank you.
Thank you for the presentation. We will now turn to the City Attorney for some comments.
Thank you, Council President. As a reminder to the Council, the legal standard of review for environmental appeals is de novo. That means the Council must exercise its independent judgment based on the record for today's item, whether the Council agrees with the environmental determination. The project is not before you today. A court will uphold the Council's decision if it is supported by substantial evidence in the record. That concludes my comments.
Thank you so much for that. We will now go to the appellant who has a presentation. I believe it's Ms. McCann who's online. And Ms. McCann, if you'd like to let us know how much time you'd like for your presentation.
Yes, thank you. Good afternoon, council members and council president. I would like 15 minutes, including some time for a rebuttal if needed.
Please proceed.
Okay, also I have submitted photos and some documentation in an agenda comment for this item. So please refer to that document. Secondly, please note that the wording on the agenda item differs from the wording in the NORA. There is no mention in the NORA that this project involves a contract with West Coast Arborists. The main issue with this environmental determination is that you cannot exempt activities on a citywide basis when there's no ability to evaluate the project. The language is too broad and can potentially exempt all tree clearing activities if done for quote unquote forestry purposes, which is undefined. There is no time frame associated with this project, so conceivably you could exempt all tree service activities in perpetuity if you uphold this determination. I understand it would be impossible to say that X number of trees would be planted and X number of trees trimmed and X number of trees removed, but you do have historical data to work with that could provide a level of detail that is missing from this NORA. And you can at least put maximum minimums on it as well as precisely define what you mean by forestry purposes, technical services, and mature, healthy trees. The city's urban forester has a history of removing or recommending the removal of mature, healthy trees for specious reasons. One prime example is a tree at 4539 Edgware Road in Kensington that was removed in January 2020, 6 months after the tree's roots were pruned and a new sidewalk poured around it. When asked why the tree was removed in a deposition, Mr. Widener twice declared under oath that the tree had to be removed in order to replace the sidewalk. Only after being presented with evidence that the sidewalk had been replaced before the tree was removed did Mr. Widener change his story to another answer. All evidence submitted during litigation, including an analysis and report by a certified arborist, shows that the tree was healthy at the time of removal. So we also have a problem with how the city defines, quote unquote, healthy, mature, scenic trees. Also uncovered during litigation is data that shows that the city removes more trees in a year than it plants, year after year. Evidence also shows that the city plants far fewer trees in a year than it states it will in annual budgets and staff reports. Unaccounted for are hundreds, if not thousands, of dead trees that are currently standing in the public right-of-way. Many of these dead trees are newly planted but received inadequate care after planting and did not survive. Because those dead trees are still standing in the parkways, they do not count in the total of trees removed in a year, although they may have been counted among the number planted in a year. So the net loss on a stem per sem basis in the city is greater than what you can calculate based on staff reports. The urban canopy is currently at 13%, exactly where it was 8 years ago. Despite the language in the Climate Action Plan describing how the canopy will grow to 15% by 2020 and 35% by 2035, and despite all the reports of how many trees we've planted lately and all the fun photo ops with the mayor planting trees, the canopy will never grow beyond what it is until the city changes its approach to urban forestry and puts an emphasis on trees as an environmental asset, instead of looking at trees as liabilities or ornaments or something in the way of hardscape. You have to stop removing trees without consequence. Otherwise, I suggest you revise your greenhouse gas emission calculations in the CAP because they're just based on nothing. Now, getting to the staff report for this item, in the background information, staff notes that this project is a contract between the Streets Division of Transportation Department and West Coast Arborists for an amount not to exceed $3 million. That detail is not in the NORA. It goes on to define what staff means by technical services. That definition is not in the NORA and is therefore open to interpretation. It goes on to list best management practices and ANSI standards for the work to be performed. However, we know factually that the city and the West Coast Arborists violated state law when they removed several trees in Kensington during nesting season without checking for nests. And we know nests were present in the trees they removed because we found a broken egg during that activity. That was all documented during litigation. Next, under preliminary review, the report says the project would not cause a substantial adverse change in the significance of a historical resource. But in their response to Appeal Issue 5, they state that if any historical trees are identified for removal, that would be reviewed and approved by the Historical Resources staff. First of all, which is it? There will be no adverse change, or you will be removing historic trees. Secondly, what process is it that has a tree removal approved by Historical Resources staff? And why bother with that process at all since you have predetermined that staff will approve it? Regardless, none of this information about how you would handle historic trees is in the NORA. Going back to the response to Appeal Issue 2, cumulative impacts, this contract is only one of several that the city has with tree service contractors. For example, Davey Tree Service. If West Coast Arborist removes 2,000 trees and Davie Tree Service removes 2,000 trees, et cetera, then there'll be certainly a cumulative impact. Or if West Coast Arborist plants 400 trees and removes 1,400 trees, there would be a cumulative impact, and it would be an adverse impact. But since there's no detail in the NORA, it's hard to say what the final impact will be. As far as staff's response, since this is the same as a previous contract that was exempted from CEQA, and it would not expand or change the tree services, therefore there's no impact on the environment, that's irrelevant to this project and this environmental determination. Unless you want to look at the performance under the existing contract and look at how many trees were planted and how many were removed, you would have to see there's a negative impact on the environment under the existing contract because there's a net loss of canopy and you cannot achieve your CAP goals if you keep going this way. Considering the scope of this project, perhaps an EIR is what's needed to allow the level of detail. Please send this environmental determination back to staff for more details of what exactly they're planning to do under this contract. Putting it in a staff report to a council hearing does not allow the public to comment on it. And while you're at it, please review the goals of the CAP against the urban forestry budget. I listened this afternoon about your budgets, and clearly there's no money for the CAP implementation. So every tree counts. You have to stop taking out trees just for convenience, just because you don't want to deal with a, complaint of a resident that a branch is blocking their parking. Let's take the whole tree out. This has got to change, and I think you can stop it now and send this back to staff and come up with a new process for maintaining what we really need, and that's more trees. Thank you.
Thank you to the appellant, Ms. McCann. With that, Assistant Clerk, let's proceed with public comment on this item.
Yes, we do have one public comment speaker here in chambers, Michael Pallett. If you can please come up. You'll have 2 minutes.
Good afternoon, Honorable Council President, council members. My name is Mike Pallett. I'm the Vice President of West Coast Arborists. I'm not here to debate any issues with CEQA. I'm here just to basically state, we're grateful as a company to be stewards of your urban forest. We are currently not doing maintenance activities as we've been paused, as this has delayed a lot of the requirements of an urban forest, including some of the high-risk trees that are out there that aren't being maintained. We're not able to go address your current trees as this is in a pause mode at the moment. And we do have a workforce consisting of local 89 workers that are currently paused on their work as this delay is causing that challenge. But nonetheless, we are grateful to be the stewards of your urban forest and look forward to a resolution that gets us ideally back out there working. Thank you.
Thank you. We do have 2 speakers on the line, and we will start with Lori Saldana.
Thank you. And thank you to Ms. McCann for her presentation and her advocacy. And I appreciate very much the points she's made. And she made similar points when it came to undergrounding and the cumulative impacts that the city is not taking into account. And I believe that a court and judges found in a support of her claim that San Diego often issues these types of contracts and permits this type of ongoing activity without looking for consistency in our climate action plan. And our tree canopy is an essential part of that. It should be in-house. This is not something that should be contracted out. If we're going to achieve our climate action plan goals and have these types of evaluations done, it should be ongoing and part of professional arborists that the city is actually employing, as opposed to having to contract out, which increases the cost over time and reduces the oversight and accountability. And I noticed that the permits and the licenses for West Coast Landscaping actually expire in a few days at the end of this year. So I hope with the delays that that's taken into account to look at whether or not this is approved, make sure that everyone is up to date on their permits and licensing. But the bottom line is this city often just ignores the regulatory requirements. A court has found in Ms. McCann's favor on similar complaints. I really encourage the council to take these issues seriously because if not, you may wind up with yet another lawsuit. I, for one, who is currently involved with litigation with the city, I don't appreciate that we have to sue you in order to get you to comply with the law. The laws apply to all of us as individuals in this community and as the city as a whole. So I hope you will take that into account and reconsider as you go forward how this complies with our climate action plan goals. Thank you.
Next, we have Kelvin Barrios.
Good afternoon, council members. My name is Kelvin Barrios. I am the Director of Government Affairs for Laborers Local 89. I'm here on behalf of our business manager, Valentin Macedo, and our 4,000 members here in San Diego County. WCA West Coast, the arborist contractor that spoke before me or in person, it's one of our contractors. And I did want to point out that this contractor does provide good paying jobs for our members with pension benefits, healthcare benefits. We don't see any oversight issues that have been brought up to us, and we have very good communication with the city. We hope that this issue is resolved so that our tree trimming contractor can get back to work. And I know it's an important issue citywide that our canopy is maintained properly. Again, speaking in support of the staff recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you. That concludes public comment on this item.
Thank you, Assistant Clerk. We will begin the council's conversation on this item with Councilor LaCava.
Thank you, Council President. I want to thank the appellant for their efforts and the presentation that was made this afternoon. You've touched on a lot of different bases. That strikes me, goes beyond the action in front of us today. But I appreciate the issues you raise. Those are exactly the same issues that I'm concerned about in terms of how we do our ongoing maintenance, on this case in trees. But I don't think that's the clarification that the city attorney provided us. So with that, thank you, staff, for the presentation. I think you did a very detailed analysis of the issues that were raised in the appeal and provided that substantial evidence that we needed to make a determination. So with that, Council President, I'll move to deny the appeal of the categorical exemption based on the substantial evidence in the record and approve the environmental determination.
Thank you, Councilor LaCava. I will second the motion there. Ms. McCann, I appreciate the advocacy. Ms. McCann is standing in front of the beautiful tree she is standing in front of is just several, maybe 100 yards from where I live. Lexi and I walk past that tree regularly. So I definitely appreciate the efforts from Ms. McCann and the issues raised. But I agree with you, Councilmember LaCava, in terms of what is in front of us in this exact moment. So I will second your motion. And Councilmember Von Wilpert?
Thank you, Council President. I just wanted to also echo thanks to staff for coming in. I very much appreciate the thorough briefing we got in the backup materials that are publicly available. I want to thank Ms. McCann as well for your advocacy and for caring so much about our city's tree canopy. I think that, as Councilor LaCava mentioned and Council President Ela Rivera, we agree with you on a lot of the points of the need for our urban canopy and the climate action plan, but we have heard from the city attorney, from staff, that that is not the issue today. We are simply voting on whether this contract for tree maintenance is exempt from CEQA. So given that that's what we have to vote on today, I will support the motion, but I can look forward to continuing our conversations in the Environment Committee especially, which I know Councilman LaCava is a fierce advocate for maintaining our climate action plan. So I look forward to continuing these conversations. I just want to thank you for your advocacy, so thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Von Wilpert. So we have a motion from Councilmember LaCava, seconded by myself. Seeing no additional requests to speak, Assistant Clerk, please call the roll.
I have set up the voting system. Please cast your vote. Councilmember Moreno, how?
Moreno, yes.
Thank you very much, and that passes unanimously, 9-0.
Thank you, Assistant Clerk. Let's move to item 338.
Thank you. Item 338 is the appeal of the environmental determination for landscape services for the Library Department, RFP 1008930-23-R. This item is not subject to the mayor's veto.
Thank you. Assistant Clerk, once staff is settled in, let us know how much time you'd like for your presentation, and please introduce yourselves for the record.
Good afternoon, Honorable Council President and members of the City Council. My name is Greg Johansson, Senior Planner for the Planning Department. I'm joined today by Becky Malone, Program Manager for the Planning Department. The item before you is the appeal of the environmental determination for the request for proposal for landscape services for the Library Department. Probably need about 8-9 minutes.
Please proceed.
Next slide, please. Thank you. The first issue raised by the appellant is that the project description is vague. The location of the work to be performed is overly broad. 35 library branches for the San Carlos vacant, including the San Carlos vacant lot and the Ocean Beach Annex. The community planning area is marked as all, and the council districts is marked as all on the NORA. The staff's response is that the project description is not vague. The NORA includes a high-level summary of the project that specifically identified that the scope of the action was to release an RFP to procure bids from contractors to perform complete landscape maintenance for the San Diego City branch libraries, the San Carlos site, and the Ocean Beach Annex. Staff reviewed the RFP when making the determination. For a more detailed description, please see attachment 3. The NORA includes contact information for a city contact, which is the project applicant, who manages the project and is available to answer any questions about the project scope. All this information gave substantial detail that the library was in the process of soliciting landscape maintenance services. The possibility that the services could include tree removal, but only under specific circumstances, does not impact the environmental determination that such services are categorically exempt as stated in the NORA. Second issue was raised by the appellant, that there could be cumulative impacts. The appellant goes on to say the project manager's supporting statement is that no cumulative impacts were identified. This determination is based on a vague description. Contractor shall perform complete landscape maintenance and all contract sites identified, including but not limited to. So, of the work to be done, it was too vague a description, basically. There would be significant cumulative impacts if hundreds or thousands of trees were removed throughout the city, as that would result in a significant decrease in the total canopy in conflict with the city's climate action plan. The impact of tree removal would have to be balanced against the impact of tree planting to know what the final impact will be. As it is, the city removes more trees annually than it plants, so any tree removal would result in an immediate reduction in canopy and would be in conflict with the climate action plan. As the ability to sequester GHG emissions is diminished by tree removal, other sources of GHG or other forms of mitigation would have to be known in order to judge the cumulative impacts. Staff response is that there are no cumulative impacts deriving from RFP 1008993-0-23-R that would change the environmental determination in the NORA. CEQA guidelines section 15300.2b states an impact that results due to successive projects of the same type in the same place over time is significant. The project is an RFP to procure bids from contractors to perform complete landscape maintenance for the City of San Diego branch libraries, including the San Carlos site and the Ocean Beach Annex. This project does not fall in the category of successive projects of the same type in the same place, and thus the exception to the exemption, CEQA guidelines sections 15300.2b, would not apply. In addition, tree removal is not requested as an active service from the contractor through this RFP. Rather, tree removal is only required as a possible service under specific circumstances, such as when existing trees are uprooted or broken because of a storm, there is a hazardous condition regarding a fallen tree, or a tree is lost due to the contractor's faulty maintenance or negligence, in which case the lost tree must be replaced. The possibility that the requested services could include tree removal, but only under specific circumstances, does not create any cumulative impacts. Issue number 3 that the appellant raised is that there could be significant impacts on the environment. The appellant provides that without knowing the location and number of trees removed, there cannot be a meaningful calculation of loss of canopy, increase in heat island effect, loss of carbon sequestration ability, and loss of aesthetic appeal. Additionally, the city does not have a current inventory of the trees existing on library grounds, does not know how many trees currently are living, does not know their age and health status, and does not know how to calculate the carbon sequestration rate of individual trees per staff testimony during litigation. Without a basis to calculate from the impact of the tree removal, whether mature or younger, on greenhouse gas emissions cannot be adequately assessed. Staff's response: there are no significant environmental impacts deriving from this RFP. Pursuant to CEQA guidelines sections 15382, significant effect on the environment means a substantial or potentially substantial adverse change in any of the physical conditions within the area affected by the project. The project is an RFP to procure bids from contractors to perform complete landscape maintenance for the City of San Diego branch libraries. The RFP includes a list of the services needed for each location. Per the scope of work included in the RFP, during and at the end of the maintenance period, all plant material shall be in a healthy, growing condition. In addition, tree removal is not requested as an active service from the contractor. Rather, tree removal is only required as a possible service under specific circumstances, such as when existing trees are uprooted or broken because of a storm, there's a hazardous condition regarding a fallen tree, or the tree is lost to the contractor's faulty maintenance or negligence, in which case it will be replaced, as per the RFP. The requested services involve landscape maintenance for existing facilities, both of which fall within the categorical exemptions, stated in the NORA. Therefore, there would be no significant impacts on the environment, and the possibility that the requested services could include tree removal, but only under specific circumstances, does not create an environmental impact that would change this environmental determination. The fourth, final issue that was brought up by the appellant is that the project could affect, thank you again, historical resources. The fourth issue is that the appellant raised is that the project could affect historical resources. The appellant specifically calls out potential historic tree removal at the Kensington Normal Heights branch library. Tree removal is not requested as an active service from the contractor through this RFP. Rather, tree removal is only required as the possible service under specific circumstances that I've gone over with a couple of the other issues. The possibility that the requested services could include tree removal, but only under specific circumstances, does not create an environmental impact that would change this environmental determination, even if one of those circumstances occurred with regard to a historical tree. The Kensington Normal Heights Branch Library and the City Heights Weingart Library are not listed as sites in this RFP, as both libraries are located on city parks, and the Parks and Recreation Department maintains those trees. In conclusion, the project before the City Council has been reviewed in accordance with CEQA and was determined to be categorically exempt. Based upon evidence in the record, the project is exempt pursuant to CEQA guidelines sections 15301, existing facilities, 15304, minor alterations to land, and would not result in a significant effect on the environment. Furthermore, the exemptions listed in CEQA guidelines section 15300.2 would not apply because no cumulative impacts were identified. No significant effects on the environment were identified. The project would not cause a substantial adverse change in the significance of a historic resource. The project is not adjacent to a scenic highway, nor is the project identified on a list of hazardous waste sites pursuant to 6596.25 of the Government Code. The assertion of the appellant of the inapplicability of the environmental determination for this project is not supported. The appellant does not offer evidence demonstrating how the proposed project would exacerbate existing conditions or cause an environmental impact. Staff recommends that the City Council deny the appeal of the environmental determination and approve the environmental determination of exemption for the RFP for landscape services for the Library Department. Thank you.
Thank you for the presentation. We will now turn back to the City Attorney for some comments.
Thank you, Council President. The legal standard of review for environmental appeals is de novo. That means the Council must exercise its independent judgment based on the record for today's item, whether the Council agrees with the environmental determination. The project is not before you today. A court will uphold the Council's decision if it is supported by substantial evidence in the record. That concludes my comments.
Thank you so much. We will now go to the appellant. Is the appellant here for a presentation?
Yeah, I'm here.
All right. Ms. McCann, how much time would you like?
I only need 5 minutes.
All right.
Thank you. I know what's going to happen, but let me just say everything I said previously on item 337 applies here. A couple of things specifically to this one. All of these details provided in the staff report to this meeting today are missing from the NORA, so there's no way to adequately provide input on those aspects. The NORA states this will apply at 35 libraries and empty lot in the Ocean Beach Annex. My understanding is there are only 36 libraries in the city. So if 2 libraries are not covered under there, which 2 are they? Because the NORA does not say that the Kensington Library Park is not covered under this. It seems to include all the libraries in the city. The staff report also says that tree removal is not under this. But then maybe it might be. It could be under certain circumstances. If any trees are going to be removed under this contract, it needs to be detailed in the NORA that will happen and what those specific circumstances are that would require you to remove a tree. That is not in the NORA. The staff report is not part of the NORA. We cannot comment on the staff report. So the kind of things that you're talking about in the staff report need to go back into the NORA. And since it does seem to cover the Kensington Library Park, since you say all 35 plus the empty lot and Ocean Beach, then let me tell you, there are heritage trees in the library park that were designated by the Community Forest Advisory Board in 2009. They were planted in 1910. As part of the original amenities of this Kensington Park subdivision. They are 50 years old or older, according to the rules of heritage trees. They have a connection to a historic event and district, and that's all covered under CP 900-19, yet nowhere in the NORA do you acknowledge that there are historic trees present in library grounds. Now, if you want to exempt Kensington, you got to put it in the NORA. I don't know if there are other library grounds with historic trees on them. The problem with the whole heritage tree CP 900-19 program is you don't have a database. You lost track of which trees have been designated as heritage trees, so you have no idea if you're cutting down a historical tree or not. And if you go after a historical tree, and somebody wants to protest that, what will come back is, sorry, failure to exhaust administrative appeal. You should have appealed the NORA within the 10 days allotted. And these NORAs don't have enough information in them to know what you're going to do. So I have to appeal this. I don't know what you're going to do next, but everything you have in here allows you to do whatever you want with no consequences, and there's no way for anybody to come back and try to prevent it afterward because failure to exhaust administrative repeal, because you continually use these NORAs that are posted on a very obscure website that nobody knows about, and that's your only chance to comment on things that definitely have negative impacts on the environment. And, you know, yeah, I got to look at them every day. I got to read them whether I want to or not. I wade through all the NORAs for special event permits for parades and birthday parties and beer gardens. And then every once in a while, you'll find a major undergrounding infrastructure project stuck in there with the hope that nobody will notice it. And usually they don't. Well, I noticed these, and that's why I'm here today. And I'm sure we'll see you again in court soon. Thank you.
We will now, thank you, Ms. McCann. We will now proceed with public comment on this item.
There is no public comment in chambers. I will start the 5-minute timer for those on the line. We will start with John Stump.
Hi, good afternoon, John Stump. I thought the citizen did a really good job of making their presentation. I liked their background of the tree that raised all this controversy. There were comments made in the staff report that I kind of wondered about, and it may be just that I have the wrong facts. But the Kensington Library Park, which seems to have been occupied in 1910, I've always had an impression that that park, that facility and that land wasn't dedicated park, that it actually preceded annexation to the city of San Diego and is County of San Diego land, not dedicated park. Likewise, on the City Heights Library, which of course, as most of you know, I'm a member of the library board there and a life member of the Friends of the Library. Is the library actually on dedicated parkland or is it separate land? So I'm just making an inquiry. Is the Kensington land, that square, dedicated city parkland, or is it actually land of the County of San Diego or some other status? And secondly, is it correct to say that the City Heights Library is on dedicated parkland? Thank you very much. Those are my inquiries.
Thank you. That concludes public comment on this item.
Thank you, Assistant Clerk. We will now move to the council, beginning with Councilmember LaCava.
Thank you, Council President. Again, thank you to the applicant for the sophisticated presentation you made and the issues that you raised. Some of the ones that you talk about are operational conversations, but I noticed a lot of references to if this was done and if that was done. So the speculation of where things could go, I don't find compelling in the appeal. I do recall, I'm feeling very proud about working with then Councilmember Sherry Leitner to make sure that the NORAs actually had a much wider distribution than they did back in the day. So we're a big city, and so there are a lot of NORAs being prepared to be in compliance with CEQA for all the things the city does on an everyday basis. I don't think there's any attempt, my personal opinion, to sneak anything through, being hidden between all the NORAs that are done. This is our way to be transparent and comply with the CEQA requirements. I listened very carefully to the appellant's arguments, listened very carefully to the backup or review the backup material as well as the presentation by staff. Thank you, staff, for going through item by item and having a very detailed response. I believe you took it very, very seriously in putting your presentation and responding to the issues or the appellant issues. So with that, Council President, I'll move to deny the appeal of the category exemption based on the substantial evidence in the record and approve the environmental determination on the RFP and the issuance of a contract. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember LaCava. Councilmember Campbell.
Thank you. I would like to ask the city arborist about these type of contracts. I think this citizen is worried about the trees and the health of the trees. And we all know that we need even a bigger urban canopy than we have. So could the city arborist or their department please let us know, do you watch these contractors? Do you check up on what they're doing? Do they report to you what they're doing with the trees? Are we monitoring? Thanks, Brian.
Thanks for the question, Council Member. We have several contracts throughout the city in regards to tree maintenance managed by a variety of different departments. We do check up on the contractor through such mechanisms as contract compliance plans. The contractors too also have staff that are certified arborists, tree climbers, and things like that.
So, and also, do we have a list of our trees? I know you've been working on trying to create that over the past couple of years, and I just wondered how we're doing.
Yeah, so we're actually conducting a street tree inventory as we speak with a contractor that only covers street trees. We are thinking about other ways of inventorying our park trees, trees that are on other city properties such as libraries, real estate assets, et cetera. We do have a complete list of historic landmark preservation trees, which the Transportation Department manages. And yeah, we have a lot of trees, somewhere in the ballpark of over 250,000 street trees, we believe, over 600,000 trees on parks. And at the moment, we don't know how many we have on other city properties, but again, we're thinking about trying to wrap our heads around that and hopefully inventory those trees as well.
Great, thank you. I'm so glad you're being able to accomplish some of that. It's a huge job, huge task. And it's so important because these trees take the CO2 out of the air and give us back oxygen. So, of course, I think every one of us is really interested in making sure that our trees are safe. And I understand the concerns of the citizen, but it just seems to me that this appeal should be denied. And I'd like to second the motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Campbell. I will circle back to Councilmember LaCava. I want to make sure that we are clear on the motion in front of us. I believe we have a slide with that. I can pull that up and just confirm. Councilmember LaCava, I just want to confirm that that is, assuming that the font is large enough. There we go. Apologies.
Yes, thank you for that.
All right, and Councilmember Campbell confirming that that is the second that you'd like to make. Thank you. So we have a motion, we have a second on the floor. I see no additional requests to speak. Clerk, please call the roll.
I've prepared the voting system, and Councilmember Moreno, if you can say your vote orally for the record.
Moreno, yes.
Thank you. And that passes unanimously. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Assistant Clerk. We are going to very quickly hop out of order and adjourn as council to convene as the Housing Authority. We're going to do that so we can return the Housing Authority item to staff. I wanted to give them as much notice as possible that we're going to do that. We'll come back to item 333 in a moment, but in the meantime, Assistant Clerk, yes, go ahead.
If you're returning the item, there does not need to be any public comment, but I do not have any in my possession, nor do I see anyone on the lights for it as well.